Well, the NFL draft is now done, which means it's time to get the gang back together here on the NFC West Huddle. I'm Aaron Levine in Seattle, joined by Richard Sines in Phoenix, Frank Malacote in San Francisco, and the man, the myth, the legend is back in Los Angeles, Gerard Moncure. Guys, let's get right to the first topic. What grade would you give your team's draft and why? Gerard, we're going to come to you first.
Well, Aaron, I'm going to go B+ for the Rams. Sean McVay, Les Snead traded out of the first round again, which is what they usually do. And they picked Terrence Ferguson with their first pick in the second round. He's the heir apparent at tight end to Tyler Higbee. And if you know about the Rams passing game, you know quick looks for Matthew Stafford are very, very important. Terrence Ferguson had a great career at Oregon. And Tyler Higbee's been hurt a few times. And the Rams needed to solidify someone that was going to be the heir apparent if Higbee goes down again, a guy that can step in and play right away. So he's that guy. Now, they also lost a starting linebacker in Christian Roseboom. They picked up Josiah Stewart from Michigan, fulfilling one of the needs, and also Chris Paul Jr. from Ole Miss. He led the Rebels in tackles in 2024. Both these guys should be NFL ready at the linebacker position. They also added Ty Hamilton from The Ohio State University to that defensive line, which was a surprise last year. It was one of the strong points of the team. So they add some more speed, some muscle, some depth to that defensive line, which should help this defense possibly be the best defense in the division coming up this season. Now, the only thing they didn't address was the cornerback spot. There have already been rumors that Les Snead and Sean McVay would welcome a reunion with Jalen Ramsey. He is on the trading block in Miami, so we'll see if that materializes. Other than that, that is the only thing that they did not address. Now, the guys that they have playing are all back, so they might be satisfied with that. I would like to see them bring in a big-time corner. We'll see if the Ramsey situation materializes. But for me, you know, they did a pretty good job hitting all the spots they needed, so it's a B+.
Well, Richard, you're up next. What grade did the Cardinals get for their draft?
You know, it's funny because it reminded me of when I had my fantasy football draft, and the Chimichangas usually get an A++, because we're a bit of a dynasty, my fantasy team. So that's what I give the Cardinals. I even wrote it in my diary. I wrote it down. I was so excited that they get an A++. And the reason they get it is because they're following the Eagles, kind of mode, and they're going with defense. I mean, they went all defensive players except for one. Their first pick was Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle out of Ole Miss, and it was obvious that this Cardinals team needed some help on that side of the football, and they were weak against the run. They weren't putting pressure on the quarterback, and as we all know, you have to protect your quarterback and also knock down the other team's quarterback, right? And a guy like Walter Nolan will do that. And then they get Will Johnson in the second round out of Michigan. This guy would have been a top 5 pick if he wasn't injured, but both Johnson and Nolan came in to the Cardinals for the visits, and so the Cardinals did their due diligence and found out that Walter Nolan, there were some words, some comments about his character, but they met with him, they feel good about him, they did their research, and of course Will Johnson, if he hits, this could be like a Honey Badger type hit. So all of the picks on the defensive side of the football except one, they got an offensive lineman out of Texas, but they go with defensive tackle, edge rusher, linebacker, corner, filling in a lot of needs and also getting great value. So Monty Ossenfort, once again, the new GM for the Arizona Cardinals in his third draft, doing a fantastic job going with defense, defense, defense. And as we all know, offense wins games, but defense wins championships.
Well, good luck to Will Johnson out there. Mike McDonald coached him at Michigan and still didn't draft him here, so there must be a reason for that. Hopefully that knee injury works out okay in Arizona. I'll go next. I'm giving the Seahawks an A, borderline A+ for this draft. I can honestly say this is the most excited I've been about a draft class in at least a decade. It all started with their first-round pick by taking Gray Zabel. They filled their most pressing need in the interior of the offensive line, took all the pressure off of them for the next 2 days. And because of that, they were able to make some moves, utilize their draft stock to make some big things happen. They had a first-round grade on Nick Emanwari, so they traded up in the second round to get him. He's been compared to Cam Chancellor. It gives them an enforcer in their secondary who can also play up at the line of scrimmage. I'll also say this. When John Schneider starts quoting Bible verses, you know he's excited about his picks. And that's exactly what he's doing. He was doing at the end of day 2. Between Eman Wari and tight end Elijah Arroyo from Miami, and then having Jalen Milroe fall all the way to them at 92 overall, he was a very happy camper. And you also add a solid running back in Damian Martinez in the 7th round and a couple of receivers to fill a need on offense. I would say it was an outstanding draft for the Seahawks. Frank, how about the 49ers? They had a lot of needs in this year's draft. What grade do they get and why?
I'm going to give them a B+ as well. They didn't really address the offensive line. I think they should have gone fishing for one of those a little bit earlier in the draft. But they had 11 picks. 7 of the 11 were all defensive players. The first 5 were defensive players. And I think Robert Saleh, when he signed on to be the D coordinator coming up this year, he said, give me the first 5 picks. And that's exactly what he did. All linemen except for one linebacker. I love their number 1 pick, 11th overall. Michael Williams out of Georgia, 265 pounds, 6'5". He's just a beast, had 9 sacks in college. And Kirby Smart has delivered quite a few NFL players, especially in alignment. So I think he's going to be a plug-and-play guy immediately. Alfred Collins as well, their 2nd-round pick. D tackle out of Texas. We'll talk about him a little bit more later, but he's like 325 pounds. The guy's a beast, and he's a baller. I love him. Then they went linebacker out of Oklahoma State. They did pick up a quarterback, Upton Stout, C.J. West, yet another defensive tackle. Kind of interesting. Late rounds, you know what they did with Brock Purdy years back. Well, they picked up a quarterback in the 7th round, Curtis Rourke, out of Indiana. Indiana had a terrific season, but he's got a bad knee, kind of a wasted pick. I think I would have picked up an offensive lineman at that pick. That's why I'm giving him a B+. They also have Mac Jones they signed, and he'll certainly be the backup to Brock Purdy. I do like this pick. Junior Bergen, pardon me, 7th round pick out of Montana. The guy is scat back, a big returner. Their return game was bad. Ricky Pearsall had a couple of moments, but they really can't turn and burn in the return area. And this guy had 8 touchdowns up in Montana. So I think he might be one of those guys to keep an eye on.
7th round picks have been good to the 49ers if you go back to Brock Purdy. Okay, up next, I know the expectations are always high for the 1st round pick, but outside of the 1st rounders, who in your team's draft class has the potential to end up being the most impactful player down the line? Richard, you're first up this time.
All right, well, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to give you 2. I already kind of mentioned Will Johnson, right? The 2nd-round pick out of Michigan. You know, like I said, he would have been a top 5 pick. If he hits, it could be a honey badger type situation where people passed up on him. The Cardinals took him later than expected, and he ends up being a great player for them, ends up winning a Super Bowl with Kansas City later. So this guy is absolutely amazing out of the University of Michigan. He's a game changer, right? He's one of those shutdown corners. He was an MVP for Michigan. He's a winner, but of course he had issues with his knee and his toe. That's the one that kind of worries me the most, is those toe injuries are so difficult. A lot of people say, well, just a toe. Well, look, Deion Sanders had to retire because of his toe injury. Jack Lambert as well. So if he can get healthy, boy, this could be a big hit. And then the second one I'm going to give you is Jordan Birch, the edge rusher out of Oregon. This guy is 6'4", 279, and runs a 4.6 40. You get that kind of speed on the edge, getting to after the quarterback, boy, that could create all kinds of havoc. And like I mentioned, the Cardinals are kind of going with the Eagles type of mode. Jonathan Gannon came from the Eagles. He was the defensive coordinator before he came and became the head coach for the Arizona Cardinals. They already got Josh Sweat. You add a kid like Birch, getting after the quarterback. This defense could have a major upgrade this year. So it's going to be interesting to watch those 2 guys.
Putting a lot of pressure on that defense, and I'm looking forward to seeing the Cardinals D this upcoming season. Frank, you're next. What member of the Niners draft class could have the biggest impact?
Well, I'm going to go with their 2nd-round pick. I touched on him a little bit, Alfred Collins. Some thought he might be a late 1st-rounder, defensive tackle out of Texas. Boy Scout off the field. There are no red flags with this guy whatsoever. He's a gentleman, but just a beast, an animal on the field. Big-time program coming out of Texas. He's a winner, 6'5", 320 pounds. The guy could just fall down and block somebody or gum up the works. runs the 40 in 5 seconds, but consider how big he is, and a really good run defender. And the 49ers certainly were not good against the run. As mentioned, plug-and-play guy. And they really need this draft class, much like they did last year. They're getting younger. They lost a lot of defensive players, so these guys got to make an impact and start right away, and I think this guy will. I also mentioned Junior Bergam, 252nd pick. The funny thing about Shanahan, he was a wide receiver when he played football at Texas. He's got kind of an affinity for them, and he always drafts at least one pretty much per draft, sometimes two. And this was his guy. He picked him out of Montana. I think he'll be a sleeper. You're going to see him on returns. And out of Montana, he's only 5'8". He's not a big guy, but he's quick. And he might be a guy to keep an eye on.
Cool. I will go next. And I think 3 to 5 years from now, Jalen Milroe has the most potential to be the steal of this year's draft class, just like Russell Wilson, a third-round draft pick. In fact, there are many similarities to 2012 when the Seahawks signed Matt Flynn before drafting Wilson. This year, they signed Sam Darnold before drafting Milroe. I don't expect Milroe to start any games this season like Russell did his rookie year, but he's definitely a guy who could be the Hawks' long-term starter at that position in a couple of seasons from now. There's nothing keeping Darnold here longer than a couple of years, and if Milroe grows into the quarterback they think he can be, you're then getting a dual-threat guy who can use his legs. He said himself there's nothing he can't do on a football field. I love that confidence, but I also appreciate his humility given his expectation to come in and learn from the veterans to start his career. There's no pressure on him to be the guy from the very start. So when it's all said and done, I love the future with Jalen Milroe under center here in Seattle. And Gerard, who in the Rams class has the highest upside outside of their first-round pick?
Well, they traded out of the first round. So they picked up the tight end, Terrence Ferguson from Oregon, in the second round. And as I said, with Matthew Stafford, you've got to have a tight end that, of course, can not only block. All the Rams receivers and the tight end position, they block. It's a big deal in Sean McVay's offense. But Terrence Ferguson can catch the football. He tied a single-season record at Oregon with 43 receptions. His 591 receiving yards were the second most in school history. The Rams are so high on this guy. This is the highest that they drafted a tight end since they took Gerald Everett with the 44th overall pick back in 2017, Sean McVay's first year with the squad. Tyler Higbee came on strong when he came back into the lineup after being injured, but they've got to have a legit guy that can step in there if Higbee goes down again. And Ferguson could be an impact guy right away in this offense. I really believe that.
Okay, on to our next topic. What are the biggest question marks on your team now that the draft has ended? Frank, it's your turn to go first with the Niners.
Yeah, I kind of touched on this, Aaron, a little bit, but I think offensive line, instead of 7 defensive players, I might have swooped one up in the 4th or 5th round just to have them on the team. They lost Aaron Banks, one of their guards. Left tackle Trent Williams, coming off an injury-plagued season. He's 36. He's in year 16. The guy's first ballot Hall of Famer, but he is getting older. Jake Brindell just signed a 4-year deal. Their center, he's good. Dominic Pooney, the right guard out of Kansas. He was a stud last year. He'll be a starter. And Colin McKivitz at the right tackle, pretty serviceable. But I really think that they probably should have added on to the line, at least have a little stockpile out there on the sideline. They did add DJ Humphries, too, from the Cardinals. They did draft make that Connor Colby out of Iowa. What you can say about this guy is he had 50 starts at Iowa. Very durable, 6'6", 300-pounder. But I would have liked to see maybe going a little bit deeper, a little bit earlier on that line.
So we will keep an eye on the 49ers offensive line this upcoming season. Gerard, you're next. What's the biggest question with the Rams right now?
Got to be the cornerback position. Darius Williams, who came back to the Rams last year through free agency from Jacksonville, just a so-so season. He wasn't the step-up star that they needed him to be. Akilo Witherspoon on the other side, who started a lot of games, did have some big plays. I believe he made the play that saved the game against Arizona. Richard would probably remember that one better than I would. But he was also inconsistent. Kobe Durant proved to be one of the better backups in the NFL coming into the game at corner. And Darian Kendrick who will be healthy this year, missed all of last year with a torn ACL. So they have some question marks. As I said earlier in the show, there's talk that possibly Jalen Ramsey could make a return to Los Angeles. We'll have to see if that thing materializes. But if he doesn't show up, they're really counting on these guys that have been in the lineup to take a step forward and solidify the corner position, which in my opinion has been one of the weak spots of the defense over the last couple of years.
Well, we don't have to go to Richard here, because I can tell you Ahkello Witherspoon was the one who made that big play, because as a Seahawks fan, the Hawks needed the Cardinals to win that game, and unfortunately they did not. And of course, the Rams making it into the playoffs as the divisional champs last year because of that. I will go next with the Seahawks. The biggest question mark after the draft, well, it's the same as the one before the draft. How much improvement can we see from this offensive line, and how much of a factor will the zone blocking scheme under Clint Kubiak help the guys who have already been here? I mean, the conventional thought is that in Ryan Grubb's system last year, there were too many passing plays, and too often the Seahawks linemen were being put in isolated one-on-one situations. That was just unsustainable. With a different system, some help in a draft, which they got, and a different offensive line coach, John Benson, can we see some notable improvement? Because Sam Darnold, not a very mobile guy. Geno Smith was arguably more mobile than Darnold is, so he needs some decent protection to have an impact in the game. That will be one of the biggest question marks all the way until the start of the season in September. Okay, Richard, now to you. What is the biggest outstanding question with the Cardinals after the draft?
Well, first of all, why are you guys bringing up old stuff? You know, Gerard's talking about the interception. You're rubbing it in my face. Speaking of old stuff, when he mentioned Gerald Everett, it reminded me of Chris Everett, also known as Jim Everett, the quarterback for the Rams back in the day. Google Jim Everett, Chris Everett. You guys will see that video. And then I want to go back to your pick, Aaron, about Jalen Milroe, being the steal for you guys. And I got to admit, I was kind of bummed out when you guys drafted him, because now I'm like, I won't be able to say he's not that guy when I'm talking about the Seattle quarterback, because I think he's going to be a pretty good quarterback. Because right now, Sam Darnold is just like Geno. He's not that guy. So I think Jalen will play this year probably for you guys. But I'm like, man, they got a good quarterback. This is not going to be fun for me. But anyway, when it comes to the Cardinals, I go to the offensive side of the football, because obviously this year their focus was defense. In the offseason, they go out and get Calais Campbell. They get Tomlinson, the defensive tackle from Cleveland. They get Josh Sweat. They draft all defensive guys except one offensive lineman. So on offense, I want to know who's going to be that second wide receiver, right? You've got Maserati Marv. Sometimes he's Mazda Miata Marv. I know that. But, when he's on, right? He was their top pick, number 4 overall last year. They got one of the best tight ends, if not the best tight end in football, Trey McBride. They're paying him that way, that's for sure. He had a great year last year. I want to know who's going to be the complement. Michael Wilson is still there. They didn't draft a wide receiver. I would have liked to have seen that. So maybe Michael Wilson could be that guy to step up to be that second option when it comes to wideout. We all know where he went to college, right? He went to Stanford. And Aaron, all those smart guys go to Stanford, so he's got to be good, right?
Never doubt Michael Wilson or any of the former Stanford Cardinal players, for sure. Yes. So we'll keep him on our radar also. Finally, the early odds to win the division are out. The Rams are the favorites, followed by the 49ers, then the Cardinals, and then the Seahawks. Are those odds correct, or should they be different? I'm going first on this one. This is where I get accused of being a total homer, but I don't care. The odds makers are completely wrong on this one. Maybe not on the Rams being the favorites for the division. They are the defending champs. But absolutely on the Seahawks having the worst odds to win the division, all the way back at around 5.5 to 1. If you're a Seahawks fan, I'm jumping on 2 bets right now. First, the Hawks to win the division at 5.5 to 1. And the Seahawks to win more than 7.5 games. I mean, the loss of Geno Smith and DK Metcalf has led to a massive overcorrection of the market. This is where people who really understand their team, they can take some advantage here. The Hawks are going to have a top 5 or a top 7 defense next season. It's my belief they will. Their offense will do enough to win more than half their games. This is a 10-win team minimum next year. Nobody's going to run away with this division either, but there's no way the Hawks should have the longest odds to win the NFC West. It's criminal that it's coming out like this, and so I'm calling them out tonight. Richard, we're coming back to you. The Cardinals at plus 440 to win the division. Your thoughts?
Well, first I'm going to give my thoughts on your prediction. I might have to change your last name to Simpson because you are a homer. I mean, I'm like, what is going on here? 10 wins with Sam Darnold? Didn't I just tell you he's not that guy? Maybe you're thinking Milroe will play from game one. So, yeah, I'll take the opposite on your bet for Seattle. And I think San Francisco should be the odds-on favorite to win the division. But I think the best bet is the Arizona Cardinals because we got you guys right where they want you. That's what they're saying because nobody was counting on them last year, and also they came out of nowhere and they fizzled at the end. But I think this year with some defense, they have a chance to win the division and sneak up on people because nobody's believing in them like always. But I think this year they finished the job, so they're the smart money bet right now. They're going to get more bang for your buck with the Arizona Cardinals. I think they win 10 wins. They get 10 wins this year and then some.
Did you think Geno Smith was the guy last year? Can we go back and check the tape? You said no, right?
Let me check. According to my diary, he's not that guy.
He's not
Geno
that
was
guy.
not that guy. Sam Darnold?
And the
Ditto. Still not that guy.
Seahawks won how many games last year?
Well, he was only that guy when he played the Cardinals, but everybody else, he wasn't that guy.
Just against the Cardinals, okay. And also a fourth quarter comeback against the Niners as well. But I love that. I believe the most fourth quarter or overtime game-winning drives in the last couple of seasons in the NFL, probably because his team put him behind the 8 ball as much as they did the last 2 seasons. But then again, Geno Smith, that's for a different show because he's in the AFC West now. How about Gerard? The Rams, the favorites to win the division. What do you say about that?
Come on, boys. We know the Rams are the big dog in this division right now. As long as you've got a healthy Matthew Stafford, you have the best offense probably in the division. No one can tell me any different on that. That's the key, though. He's getting up there in age. They've got to keep him upright and healthy, and if they do that, they're going to be just fine. Their running back room has got a lot more experience. They added Devontae Adams to the offense to go with Puka Nacua. I mean, are you kidding me? Defensively, that young defensive line, they've added a couple of pieces. They're playing off Jared Verse. And let's face it, they were one play away from beating the Eagles in that snowstorm in Philly and then coming back to SoFi as the favorite to win the NFC Championship game and go to the Super Bowl. They were one play away. So I like their chances being as the division leader right now. I think the Niners will be improved. Brock Purdy's going to keep getting better. There's no way San Francisco's going to have all the injuries that they suffered last year. As far as the Hawks and the Cardinals,
exactly.
You guys have some holes to fill, but it's Rams, 49ers, and then probably Cardinals, Seahawks, in my opinion.
Okay, well, apparently, according to you, the odds makers have it right. By the way, we mentioned Brock Purdy as a 7th-round pick. You got to give it to the Rams. Puka Nacua, what was he, a 5th-round pick? And look what he's done in this league. Yeah, very impressive. And finally, Frank, the Niners are close behind the Rams in terms of odds to win the division. Got to get your thoughts on that.
Well, you guys are all homers. You took your home team, for crying out loud. Okay. I'm going to go with the Rams first. I think signing Matthew Stafford was the right thing to do. He's a great quarterback. I love Stafford. I like the fact that they got Terrence Ferguson, too, out of Oregon, that big stud tight end. They had a 1-4 start. They turned around. They were 9-3 last year and so close to moving on in the playoffs. And they roasted the Niners, not once, but twice last year. So I'm going to go with the Rams first. And I'm not going to play the home card. I'm going to go with the Cardinals, number 2. Richard, I agree. You guys just loaded up on defense, on the line, and the works. I love Will Johnson out of Michigan. He's big. He's quick. The knee thing will work its way out. He should have been a first-rounder. You got him in the second-rounder. And you signed Josh Sweat from the Super Bowl champs. I like that. Niners are right there, but they've got to retool their defense. I think Saleh is the guy. They've got, 7 of their 11 coming in. Draft picks. The first 5 are all D linemen except for one who's a linebacker. And I think they're going to put the D back in defense a little bit. But they didn't really make any big splashes. They didn't sign a lot of free agents. They've been kind of quiet. So I'm going to put them down to number 3. And I like Seattle, but, I mean, Lockhart and Metcalf and Geno are all gone. I'm going to need a scorecard to figure out your offense. You've got a new quarterback, and I like Stafford. I think he did well with the Niners. I really think Shanahan helped to kind of get his fragile ego back together, and he had an all-world year up in Minnesota, but Seattle isn't Minnesota right now, and I think with all the newbies up there, it's going to take a little while to figure that all out. So I go with the Rams, Cards by just a skosh, Niners, and then Seattle.
Nobody believing in anybody up here in the Pacific Northwest. Then again, every single year, there's that team that nobody's talking about that breaks through. I remember a few years ago, the Cincinnati Bengals making it to the Super Bowl when nobody believed them preseason that they were going to do well. Seahawks currently at 65-1 to win the Super Bowl. I actually like those odds if you're going to look for value. Not saying they're going to win it all, but I do like that.
So Joe Burrow's playing for Seattle now. I did not know Joe Burrow was on the Seahawks.
Check your book. Check your book.
We're breaking news here.
We might be making comparisons to Sam Darnold very soon. Just over 4 months to the start of the regular season. So much more than enough time to debate the divisional odds and much more. And that's going to do it for us. We're going to be back next week with more friendly dialogue between the four teams.
That guy.
Can't wait. It's right here on the NFC West Huddle. Have a great night, everyone.